From Michigan Public, this is It's Just Politics. I'm Zoe Clark.
And I'm Rick Pluta.
Unlike the U.S. Congress, the Michigan legislature early this morning averted a partial government shutdown.
We were able to come to an agreement, even in a time like this with divided government.
The Republican House and Democratic Senate passed a one-week continuation budget to give themselves more time to negotiate a final budget deal for this new fiscal year.
We will be keeping government services open. The people of Michigan can still get what they need from their government for the next week, despite this minor delay.
But not everyone, including many lawmakers, are happy.
It wasn't the ideal situation. Would it be better if we had passed it on July 1? 100%. I wish we had. That's something that we as a government, we need to be better at.
You could even say it's broken and that representative government is really not working for the people right now.
It was a complicated, confounding, and historic day in Lansing. And Zach Gorchow, president of Gongwer News Service and host of the Mishmash podcast, was watching it all along with us. He is here now. Zach, hi.
Hello, Zoe and Rick.
Hello.
Goodness.
My goodness.
Zach, here's where things seem to stand as of Wednesday afternoon. Lawmakers have passed and Governor Whitmer has signed a continuation budget, a one-week extension past the October 1st deadline so that they can continue to negotiate, to write out, put down some actual numbers on bills to be voted on in a new permanent for the year state budget. How did we end up here?
Well, I mean, I hate to say this, but we don't exactly know the answer to that question. I think that the macro answer is the obvious. The Michigan Constitution, Article 9, Section 17, says the state cannot expend money without having appropriations enacted into law. That's a fancy way of saying the state can't spend anything without the legislature passing and the governor signing a bill telling them it can do it. And we got to midnight last night, and there was no bill passed nor signed into law authorizing the state to spend money. And so the state was essentially left with three options. Go into a partial government shutdown, which we've seen in the past, where the governor declares certain services to be essential, like the prisons. Option two, pass what you just described, a continuation budget, a short-term budget that keeps the government funded and operating. And then we found out about unexpected door number three, which, to be clear, nobody, and by nobody I mean not the governor, not the Senate Majority Leader, not the House Speaker. Nobody said was the official option. This is what we are doing. But there was enough clutter out there between what was said and what people were saying behind the scenes, which was door number three, keep the government open anyway. There's a saying in Lansing, it's been around since you and I first started, Rick, Constitution schmonstitution. And it's always been said by the legislative staff as sort of an under-the-breath joke when you're passing a bill and maybe in the behind-the-scenes discussion, someone says, I think this may have a constitutional problem. And that was always the joke. Right. Constitution schmonstitution.
It's a little ironic.
Anyways. And this is what felt to me last night. And again, we don't really know for sure, but the ultimate Constitution schmonstitution, we're going to keep the government open anyways. We don't care if the Constitution says otherwise.
It's the tap dance option.
And so this drama is playing out, and it's playing out both inside the dome and out. This sense that the governor, her administration, legislative leaders were going to try and possibly not pass a continuation budget, instead just somehow will into existence the continuing operation of state government, even though ostensibly that is unconstitutional. At least that has, you said, been the interpretation for, decades. What then changed to all of a sudden say, okay, no, we do need to pass a continuation budget?
I do want to be clear. I mean, one thing I had said to many people in the weeks leading up to this, the Constitution does provide for a lot of mandated spending. The state is, under the Constitution, required to fund a system of free public education. Mm-hmm. Something like 10 or 11 of the 15 public universities are required to be funded. And there are a lot of other things that are required to be funded. So I did feel that with the governor's saying nothing about contingency plans, that they were setting up for this possibly to say, you know what, we have a lot of authority under the Constitution to fulfill mandated spending and protect public health, safety, and welfare, and they might just do this. I think what was surprising was the idea that everything would be kept open. That was unexpected. How did they get to the point where they said, okay, we are going to pass a continuation budget? Again, we don't really know, but we do know that a lot of what I would describe as wise hands from around Lansing, familiar with state government, were raising hell as midnight approached, and it appeared they were going to try this, just keep it open without legal authority. And I don't know if that finally pierced this bubble. I mean, we've talked about the way budgets are written now. It's 3 or 4 people in a room, and they shut everything else out. There's not a lot of outside input. And I don't know if this was a product of that it got this far. And then finally, someone was saying, you know what, we're getting about 8 million questions about this. So we don't really know how they got to the point of saying, yeah, we're going to pass a continuation budget bill, but they did.
Why do you think, Zach, that it took so long to reach what seems to be the obvious conclusion going into yesterday that this wasn't going to get done in just one night?
I don't know, Rick. I think some of it is maybe the governor, and this is just all speculation here, but maybe the governor said, like, hey, look, we've got a deal. We'll keep the government open. No problem. We don't need to, do A, B, C, D, and E, F to, keep things running. We're good. And you've got a, still pretty inexperienced legislature. Certainly in these kinds of situations, I don't believe, and I'm pretty certain, of the 147 members of the legislature, I don't think anyone was serving in 2007 and 2009 when we had really the last time we had these kinds of situations where there wasn't a budget in place. There was absolutely a partial shutdown in 2007. There was sort of a wink and a nod, not really a shutdown in 2009. But there you don't have that experience. Yeah. So maybe if you have the governor saying, hey, we're good, nobody is really questioning that. I don't know. I can only guess.
Yeah, there was this, I don't want to use the word game, but there were folks sort of on the House floor last night saying, what number shutdown is this for you? And the only folks who this would have been more than number one, at least that we were talking to, were staff and, some clerks and things like that.
Couple reporters.
Yeah, you. We're speaking with Zach Gorchow, president of Gongwer News Service, co-host of the Mishmash podcast, and overall state capital sage. Zach, so let's talk about what comes next. Lawmakers have now bought themselves an extra week, but there are questions about whether that is still going to be enough time and whether the framework of this agreement that was announced last Thursday remains. Here's what Democratic Senator Winnie Brink said when she was asked whether or not the deal still had support in her caucus.
The framework still holds.
You're going to be able to pass
the framework still holds, yes.
Zach, what do we know about where things stand vis-a-vis passage of a new permanent budget?
Well, one thing we know is the legislature often needs a deadline to act. And now the government is funded through October 8. So we're recording on Wednesday, October 1. At sundown tonight, the Jewish holiday of Yom Kippur begins and runs through sundown October 2nd. There's no session scheduled for October 2nd, and there's no expectation anything will pass today, October 1. There are sessions on the calendar for October 3, Friday, and through the weekend, and next Monday, the 6th. And then, of course, the usual sessions on Tuesday and Wednesday, the 7th and 8th. So you look at the past as prologue, we're probably looking at something not really getting done until closer to the 8th. Now, it's possible maybe they get everything lined up and bring everybody in on Friday, the 3rd, to get it done. But that would be somewhat surprising given that they have a little more time. But what the holdup is one of the great questions here. Some of these department budgets are written. I heard wildly different things. There was the old saw about waiting for bill drafting from the Legislative Service Bureau. We often hear They often get the blame. They're like, well, we're waiting for the bills to be drafted. Everything else is done. But I heard from people who said they had seen full department budgets, drafted. So a lot of drafting, maybe even most of the drafting, is in fact done. And it's not clear though what political issues are maybe still swirling or needing to be resolved or lining up the votes. I mean, we do know that the members, the rank and file members, at least as of last evening, really hadn't seen a lot of detail yet, and they're in general likely to fall in line when all is said and done. But you're voting on it, whatever it ends up being, an 80, 81, $82 billion budget. You can't expect them to just rubber stamp it, not having read it at all, or at least not having at least skimmed it. So that I think is another issue to work through.
Yeah, a lot of frustration about that.
Yeah, I was struck by just how little information was being shared. And I'm not talking about to us. I'm talking about the actual legislators themselves.
Yeah, I think this is a long story, Zoe. This has been going on for years and years, and it's been getting worse and worse, where there has been, and I think this is happening around the country too, you see it in Congress, a consolidation of power and control at the top of the legislative branch. Meaning, at this point now, the people who really write the budget are the governor, the governor's budget director, the Speaker of the House, the Majority Leader of the Senate, and then the appropriations chairs. That is a small group of people. All of us remember a day, which isn't that long ago, but it's starting to age, probably more than 7, 8, 9, 10 years ago now, where a lot of this was delegated. You had people who chaired the subcommittees that write each department budget, who were sort of expected to do the heavy lifting, have the expertise, and leadership would make the high-level decisions. And they would tell them, you've got $1 billion to spend, go figure it out. And then they would. And that would get that meant you had buy-in from a large group of people, and there was more information out there about what was happening, and they would get it done. But now you have this massive bottleneck with such a small group of people. And the theory seems to be we just can't trust our members to really have all the information and be able to vote yes. The general strategy is we give everybody the information. The day we expect them to vote on it, we'll give them, 2 to 6 hours or whatever to digest it. And then we're going to vote, because the fear is if it all becomes public days in advance, and to be clear, that is how it used to work. Mm-hmm. But the fear is if it all becomes public days in advance, all the groups that are out there with their advocacy professionals are going to go to work on trying to get people to vote no and stop this, and we won't be able to pass it. I covered for years, Rick covered for years, budgets where these final versions were out there for days and days. And you know what? They passed. So I don't know why that sort of strategy has taken hold, but it absolutely is the strategy now.
Well, what are you hearing from stakeholders, those school officials, state employees who, K-12 schools have been waiting for 3 months since their fiscal years began July 1st to know how much money they'll be receiving from the state, without a clue.
All I'm hearing is anger. Nobody really knows, because the circle of information is being kept so tight. It used to be, I mentioned the subcommittee chairs with the expertise. If that was the education chair, they had relationships with the education community, and there was some information, traded behind the scenes just to make sure nothing got screwed up. Maybe you would, groups are not going to get everything they want, nor should they. That's part of the process. But you want to avoid a botch where you really screw something up. And that was part of the way it used to work. But all I'm hearing is anger, because nobody's hearing anything. Not the groups, not their advocacy professionals, not the multi-client lobbyists that they hire. Everyone's really being kept in the dark. And so there's a lot of concern. There maybe are some bits starting to dribble out there now. Hey, your thing got protected. You're good. So it's not, but there's a paucity of that out there. I am amazed, public education is, arguably the most important thing the state funds. And the professionals out there in charge with actually administering the K-12 system, as of yesterday, knew nothing about what they're going to get, which, seems surprising.
Zach, as we wrap, I'm thinking about the optics of all of this. We spoke with pollster Richard Schuba, who you know well, on the show last week, about how there's just no winners in all of this if lawmakers can't figure this out. Does this just continue to make folks say and feed into this narrative of folks like independent candidate for Governor Mike Duggan that both parties just can't function in Lansing?
Well, it certainly does not advance the cause of, hey, we've got a bipartisan government working together. They have differences, but they're going to work them out. The apocalyptic scenario that I think a lot of people feared, which was some type of protracted government shutdown, that appears to be off the table. So, that I think everyone would agree is a positive. That would have been the kind of thing that would have gathered the public's attention and wondering, why can't they, figure this out? Things are going to remain operational. So I think for probably most of the public, it's like, cool, wake me when it's over. Let me know what happens. But I think what the question is what is the end product with the budget? We've all talked a lot about some of the serious errors of previous budgets. Of course, the, $20 million grant to a company that it appears was, was misspent and not used properly. It's gotten an enormous amount of coverage. It's been a huge embarrassment for the state. Are there any of those kinds of problems that emerge in this budget? Does public education operations get screwed up because of the way this was handled? Are there things that the public sees and feels and wonders, well, why did this happen? That I think is the unknown. That's what I think could cause us to have broader effects beyond the 8 square blocks around the Capitol, and only time will tell.
Zach Gorchow is president of Gongwer News Service, host of the Mishmash podcast, who we are hoping gets some actual sleep tonight.
Gonna try.
Zach, thanks so much.
Thanks, Zach.
Thank you.
And of course, we will be bringing you continuing coverage of the budget from Lansing. And for today, that is It's Just Politics. I am Zoe Clark.
And I'm Rick Pluta.
Let's talk again next week.